Take a look here at 925, 926 Seattle versus Houston. Houston gets the big 8-3 victory last night. Faced up with a pitcher that wasn't overpowering. The strikeout-prone Houston lineup didn't have that type of danger facing them yesterday, and they don't have it facing them today either. Rennis Elias, the starter here last week. Lloyd McClendon inserted him into the rotation, moved Vidal Nuno back into the bullpen. Of course, last night Nuno was your starter, so both of these guys back-to-back lefties who don't throw very hard, don't overpower you, don't have the huge strikeout numbers. And I think we're going to see much of the same out of the Houston offense tonight, like we saw last night against Nuno. These two pitchers are basically interchangeable. Funny that Elias over his last 24 and a third innings has a 5.55 ERA, yet a 0.99 WHIP. Just can't seem to get himself out of trouble when trouble brews. He's given up 4 home runs in his last 24 and a third innings. Definitely a guy who has trouble with right-handed hitters. Of the 11 home runs he's allowed this season, 10 have come against righties. Houston certainly has righties with power in that lineup. I think that Elias is in for a long night here, much like Nuno was last night. We saw that game total hit 11, the 8-3 final. And if we look at the other side of the pitching matchup here tonight, Scott Feldman with 7 days worth of rest. Hey, his last 5 starts have been tremendous. 32 and a third innings pitched, 1.95 ERA, 1.11 WHIP. Not a strikeout pitcher either. Scott Feldman only 18 strikeouts in his last 32 and a third innings. But what's interesting about Scott Feldman is you find some reverse splits when you examine his numbers. On the road this year, Scott Feldman's 3-1 with a 2.36 ERA, 53 and a third innings, only 44 hits allowed on the road, only 3 home runs allowed on the road. At home, doesn't have 53 and a third innings pitched, but he's got 52 and a third innings pitched. Yet his record is 2-4, and his ERA is 5.16, a full 2.8 run jump between road and home. Kind of backwards there. He hasn't preferred to pitch in Minute Maid Park, but it gets a little bit better here because Scott Feldman, who comes from the right side, is much more effective against left-handed bats. The Seattle Mariners do have a lot of left-handed bats that have some thump in them. Lefties this season only hitting 256 off of Feldman. Righties hitting 297. That's good news for Nelson Cruz and a couple other right-handers in that Seattle lineup. Guys pitching to the tune of a 318 batting average against at home. I think Seattle's going to get to him, despite the fact that he's been better against righties than lefties, or excuse me, better against lefties than righties. Lefties are still hitting 256 against him this year. I think Seattle's lineup can score some runs against this Houston starter tonight. I definitely know Houston's going to score against Elias here. This is just the type of pitcher they like to face up with. The Houston bullpen, pretty good shape tonight. The Seattle bullpen, while not fatigued, it's just not a good bullpen, so Houston can score runs late. They did last night. Seattle did last night as well. Houston usually a little better at sealing the deal late in the game than they were last night. The total in this game has taken a real surge here. Opened at 8 -20. It's now up to 8.5 -20. So bettors out there thinking this game will go over the total. I have to agree with those out there who have made that move. As far as the side itself is concerned, game opened $1.60. Feldman the favorite. It's right in that vicinity now. Not much of a change. You can find as low as 57. You can find as high as 62. In fact, I see one move out in Las Vegas at the Westgate up to $1.72. Steady movement on Scott Feldman. So that is definitely an outlier number. Nobody else in that vicinity. That number for the favorite is about 10 cents higher than anybody else right now. Mostly you'll see about in the range of $1.61, $1.62. But I'm looking at the total here. I think it's going to get up and over the number. Seattle to do their part, scoring some runs off of Feldman, but certainly Houston to do their part, scoring their runs against Seattle. Umpire here is Chris Conroy, a guy who's had 20 home plate assignments, 10 over, 10 under, 8.2 runs per game scored in his contest. Take a little flyer here on Seattle, Houston, up and over the 8.5 runs.